Something in the ocean killed a 9-foot great white shark. Not wounded it, not scared it off. Killed it, swallowed it, and left nothing behind at a small electronic tag that washed up on an Australian beach months later. The data inside that tag would take scientists 11 years to fully explain. It recorded a violent plunge to 1,900 feet, a temperature spike that made no sense in open water, and 8 days of steady heat that could only mean one thing. The shark was inside something else's stomach. The obvious suspects were ruled out one by one. What was left was an answer hiding in the last place anyone thought to look, and it changed how scientists understood who actually rules these waters. Something washed ashore. A woman walking a stretch of Australian coastline noticed something half buried in the sand. Small, waterlogged, covered in barnacles. She picked it up. It was a research tracking tag, the kind scientists bolt onto marine animals to record where they go and how deep they dive. Tags like this do not simply fall off. They are built to stay attached until researchers retrieve them on purpose. Finding one washed up on a public beach meant something had gone wrong. When researchers downloaded the data, they found the final recorded movements of a 9-foot great white shark. Somewhere in those numbers was evidence of an attack violent enough to kill one of the ocean's most powerful predators. The shark had a name. Before her tag went dark, before she became the center of an 11-year mystery, the researchers tracking her had called her Alpha. The shark they called Alpha Alpha came to the attention of researchers during a large-scale tagging project studying great white migration patterns off the Australian coast. She was 9 feet long, healthy, and dominant. Cinematographer David Riggs, who was there the day she was tagged, remembered her differently from the other sharks. She came in with a real swagger, he said, moving with a confidence that set her apart. The tagging went smoothly. The device was secured, her vitals came back normal, and she swam off into open water without distress. The tag would record her location, depth, and the surrounding water temperature internally, storing months of data until it detached and surfaced for collection. Nobody had any reason to think Alpha's file would end differently from the rest. She was a large, healthy great white in familiar waters, an animal that, as far as anyone knew, had nothing to fear. That assumption would not survive the next 4 months. 4 months of normal then nothing. For the first weeks after tagging, Alpha's data looked exactly right. She moved through her usual range along the coastline, diving and surfacing in patterns consistent with a healthy great white working familiar territory. Nothing in the readings gave researchers a reason to look twice. Then, 4 months in, the data stopped. No warning, no gradual change. The recording simply ended, and for months afterward, nobody knew why. The tag was somewhere in the ocean, silent, drifting toward a beach where a stranger would eventually pick it up. But when researchers finally held the device and pulled its full record, they found what had been hiding in the last entry, and it stopped everyone in the room. The numbers that made no sense. In the final moments of recording, the depth reading plunged to 1,900 feet. Alpha had never gone anywhere close to that deep in her entire tracking history. Great whites can dive when they need to, but nothing in her pattern explained a drop this sudden or this extreme. That was strange enough. What came next was worse. In the same instant, the surrounding temperature jumped from 46 degrees Fahrenheit to 78, a spike of more than 30 degrees. Cold ocean water does not warm by 30 degrees in seconds. There is no natural explanation for that reading at that depth. And then the temperature held. For 8 straight days, the tag recorded that same steady 78 degrees, unchanging, as if it were no longer sitting in the ocean at all. researchers understood what it meant before anyone said it out loud. The tag was not in the water anymore. It was inside something's body. What didn't do it once researchers accepted that Alpha had been swallowed, the question became what had swallowed her. The theories came fast, and the most dramatic ones fell first. Some pointed to the Megalodon, the massive prehistoric shark that supposedly went extinct millions of years ago. The idea was irresistible. A deep-sea giant, hiding in unexplored water, rising to kill. But the data killed the theory before it started. An animal living permanently in the cold deep would carry an internal temperature close to the surrounding water, not the sharp 30-degree spike the tag recorded. Others suggested a giant squid. That failed on different grounds. Squid do not generate sustained internal heat anywhere near 78 degrees, and their feeding biology does not match an 8-day digestion at a steady temperature. Both theories made good stories. Neither survived the numbers. Whatever killed Alpha was still out there, and it was something far more familiar than a sea monster. The orca theory. With the exotic theories dead, researchers turned to a predator already well documented in Australian waters: killer whales. Cameron Braun, a doctoral researcher at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, laid out the case. A great white's own stomach ran too cool to explain the tag's reading. White shark internal temperatures typically sat around 65 to 70 degrees, leaving a gap of at least 8 degrees between what a shark's body could produce and what the tag actually recorded. Orcas closed that gap easily. Killer whales carry an internal body temperature near 90 degrees, and one taking in cold seawater alongside its prey could plausibly bring that number down to something close to 78, the exact reading on Alpha's tag. The orca fit the data better than anything before it, but fitting the data on paper and proving the kill in the real world were two different problems. If a killer whale had taken Alpha, researchers would expect some independent trace of orca activity in the area to place one at the scene. That trace never appeared. The answer was in the water the whole time. With no orca evidence to anchor the theory, researchers shifted their focus back to the exact waters where Alpha had last been tracked. They began studying the other great whites migrating through the same stretch of coastline. What they found changed the entire investigation. Several of the sharks moving through Alpha's territory were enormous. Some measured an estimated 16 feet and weighed over 2 tons, more than twice her size. A shark that large carried the speed to close a 1,900-foot dive in the time the tag recorded. But the temperature was harder. A typical great white ran too cool. Unless it wasn't typical. The largest, most active great whites retain metabolic heat in their stomach and core muscles through a specialized circulatory system, running significantly warmer internally than smaller sharks of the same species. A 16-foot great white in a high-speed vertical chase could plausibly generate exactly the heat spike on Alpha's tag. For the first time since the tag washed ashore, the data was not eliminating suspects. It was building a case against one. And that case had already been proven before. It had happened before. In 2009, off the coast of Queensland, a great white estimated at 20 feet long was seen biting into a much smaller great white. Not in the murky deep, not reconstructed from data. In front of witnesses, in open water. Shark expert Hugh Edwards addressed it directly at the time. They eat anything, he said, including their own kind. Cameron Braun, the same researcher who had raised the orca theory, confirmed that cannibalism among great whites was far from rare. It was documented, repeated, and consistent with what scientists already knew about the species. Great whites were not picky eaters. They were opportunists, and a 9-foot shark swimming through the territory of a 16-foot shark was not a rival. It was a meal. The case against a giant cannibal great white now had precedent, data, and biology behind it. But not everyone walked away convinced. One last theory would push further than science was willing to follow. The theory nobody could prove. A small number of researchers and writers who revisited the data years later argued the numbers still left room for doubt. Their alternative was stranger than anything discussed on camera. They proposed Alpha had been killed not by a shark, but by an undiscovered species of giant sea turtle. The reasoning leaned on the leatherback, the largest known turtle alive today. Leatherbacks maintain a core body temperature up to 18 degrees Celsius, warmer than the surrounding water, a gap that lined up closely with the spike on Alpha's tag. Supporters also pointed to the leatherback's long, slow digestive system as a possible match for the 8 days the tag held its temperature. The problem was obvious. No known leatherback came close to being capable of killing or swallowing a 9-foot great white. For the theory to work, it required a turtle species that had never been captured, studied, or confirmed to exist. One supporter cited a 1969 sighting by a fisherman who claimed to have filmed a shell-less turtle nearly 40 feet long. The footage was never verified. The theory did not come from the scientists who actually investigated Alpha's case. It surfaced later, built on comparison rather than evidence tied to the kill itself. It offered something the cannibal shark answer did not: the possibility that something entirely unknown was still moving through waters researchers thought they understood. But for the team that spent years with the data, the evidence kept pointing back to the same place: an answer that required no undiscovered species and no speculation. Just a bigger shark. The answer. After 11 years, after every theory had been weighed against the numbers, researchers settled on the explanation that fit every piece of data at once. A large cannibal, great white, roughly 16 feet long and over 2 tons, had killed Alpha and swallowed her whole, tag included. The dive to 1,900 feet was the chase. The temperature spike was the killer's stomach. The 8 days of steady heat were digestion. And then the tag passed through, dropped back into the ocean, and drifted until it washed up on a beach where a stranger found it in the sand. It was not the sea monster the early data seemed to promise, but it was, by every measure, the answer that matched. What Alpha's case proved went beyond one shark's death. It showed that the ocean's food chain is not as fixed as it looks from the surface. A 9-foot great white, confident and dominant in the waters she patrolled, had something bigger swimming beneath her the entire time. Alpha's tag survived only by chance. Without it, her disappearance would have gone unexplained. One more shark that vanished with no story attached. Researchers still do not know how often this happens, or how many other apex predators have met the same fate without leaving a single trace behind. The ocean has no permanent ruler, only whoever happens to be bigger in that moment. Alpha proved that even a 9-foot great white, an animal most of the world considers untouchable, can become someone else's meal. Scientists solved this mystery. But somewhere in those same waters, something larger than Alpha is still moving, and it is not waiting to be found. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more.